This is episode 4 of my deep dive into Will Tracy's Oscar-nominated screenplay, Bugonia. What's the job of an Act 3? It's got to be more than just a climax or a fight scene and then a resolution. There's a purpose to Act 3. And if you look at what satisfying Act 3s do, they back their protagonist into the corner and they force the protagonist to make a choice. Abandon their worldview or evolve, change the way that they think, and change their initial answer to the thematic question, or double down on that and say, you know what, I don't care what's happened to me. I don't care what I've experienced or seen. I'm not going to change my worldview. I'm not going to change how I see the world. And the thing that takes us to Act 3 is a transition sequence. I call it the breakdown sequence because this contains the false victory and the lowest point. These things, it's not just one thing that happens. It's a sequence of events that takes you from Act 2 to Act 3. So now let's look at Bugonia. A simple screenplay would have one protagonist go through the false victory, go through the lowest point, and then be faced with that choice and make their choice. And then that choice leads us directly to the final confrontation and the fallout and the creation of the new world. That's the end of the movie. That's where the movie ends. But Bugonia is not a simple script because Teddy is not the sole protagonist. Michelle is a co-lead in this film. They're antagonists to each other, but they're both equally important in what they have to say and what they represent. So Will Tracy had to take Teddy's character and Michelle's character and set them both on this path to hit these beats. False victory, lowest point, and then making a choice. So to keep things kind of in focus, we're going to follow one character at a time. Let's start with Teddy. Teddy's false victory, as I've said before, is his mother's finger twitching. But you can say that the whole sequence of Michelle saying there's a cure for your mother up through that finger twitching is representative of the false victory. This is Teddy saying everything that I've thought is true and I'm going to go and I'm going to save my mom. But then he puts antifreeze in her IV and he kills her. Clearly that's a lowest point, right? But with Will Tracy, again, he's working with rules of 3. So in a very short amount of time, in the span of like 4 or 5 pages, we've got Casey being killed by Teddy. We have Don killing himself. And we have Teddy killing his mother. Rule of 3. Those 3 things combined create the lowest point for Teddy. And now he's faced with a choice. And honestly, neither of Teddy's choices are all that great. But here's what they are. Look at everything that's happened. Michelle has manipulated me into putting antifreeze into my mother's IV and killing her. Nothing she's done has convinced me that she is going to admit that she's actually an alien. So I can revisit my worldview of she's an alien. I can revisit the thematic question of can I remove myself from the pain that I inflict on others? And I can act accordingly. What does that mean? Does that mean, going back to the basement and doing something completely terrible to Michelle? Not because she's an alien, but because she got him to kill his mother? Maybe that's the cause and effect of that choice. But the other choice is doubling down on your worldview. And Teddy saying, what a awful Andromedan trick. And she's still an alien. And everything that I've done and everyone that I've killed and Don and all of it is all part of the same conspiracy in my sphere, and this doesn't change anything. If all of that is true, then he can continue answering the thematic question with, yes, I can remove myself from the pain that I inflict on others. Not just the pain that I inflict on Michelle, but the pain that I've just inflicted on my mother, the pain I've inflicted on Casey, and the pain that I've indirectly and directly inflicted on Don. Teddy's never going to change who he is, so he chooses what's behind curtain number 2, and he doubles down, and he rushes out of the hospital back to the basement. So now let's pump the brakes on Teddy and go over to Michelle and see what Will Tracy's done with Michelle parallel at the same time. What's the false victory for Michelle? She fucking wins. During the dinner sequence, she wins. She's on top of Teddy, telling him he's a fucking loser, that he'll never be better than her because she's a winner. She's destroyed him. Everything that he's thought that he was capable of, she's fucking destroyed it. Until Casey rings the doorbell and Don hits her with the shotgun. That's her false victory. She almost got away on her terms without having to change, without having to do anything different than what she was doing in the beginning. Being strong, being dominant. What's her lowest point? It's not Don killing himself. She has no connection to Don. What's the lowest point? The lowest point is her finding his house of horrors. It's her finding his experiments. We'll find out later that the Andromedans are, in fact, doing experiments on humans. This flips that, and Michelle sees that Teddy's doing experiments on Andromedans, and the horror of it, and the body parts, and the journals, and when he confesses that, only 2 of them were Andromedans, that destroys Michelle's ability to ignore the thematic question, can I remove myself from the pain that I inflict on others? She's left with the choice now, knowing what she knows and having experienced what she's experienced. Those 2 choices. 1, continue the facade, continue the masquerade, keeping the human mask on, continue denying and trying to dominate, using the same strategies, continue to tell Teddy that he's insane. Choice 2, lean into it, admit it, embrace it. Join Teddy in his sphere of delusion and just tell him that he got it almost right and just lay it all out there and reclaim the Empress that you actually are. She chooses to tell Teddy the truth because not only is she reclaiming her identity, but she knows how to use that against Teddy because remember, she still needs to escape and she's still in the basement. So those 2 parallel tracks, false victory, lowest point, making a choice, all of that takes us to the heart of Act 3, which is the final confrontation. The final battle in Bugonia takes place in the basement. Not at Oxalis, not after this. Everything after that is the fallout of the final battle. This is the man-on-man, right, protagonist versus antagonist battle. This is it. Who's going to win after this moment? On page 86, Michelle lays it all out for Teddy. Teddy could have gone down there and just shot her with the shotgun. Boom, end, right? Like, you made me kill my mom, fuck you, shotgun, we're done. But that's not what he does. What he does is become submissive again because Michelle doesn't change who she is just because she's the Empress. Right? She's still the CEO. She's still the badass. And so she still takes control. And she says, listen to me. How many were Andromedans? 2. You miserable fucking idiot. Do you know what you've done? Teddy, meek, right? You killed her. Right? He's blaming her. Blame shifting. And Michelle, quiet. Listen to me, and I'll tell you why it is that I resemble a human. She goes into the world building of how humans were created. The audience, because they've been accustomed now to Michelle being manipulative, the reader isn't sure if she's making all this up because maybe she saw it in some of his journals. Is this true? Is she just thinking on her feet? We're not supposed to know. I'll say it again. I don't think that the twist in this movie, I don't think the reveal that Michelle's an alien is even important. I don't think that is what this is building to, because I don't think it matters. What matters is that she hasn't changed, but she's embracing a different choice. So she says, this planet was ruled by dinosaurs, magnificent creatures. We inadvertently spread a fatal virus to the planet, so they killed all the dinosaurs. The Emperor was struck with guilt, watching Earth's creatures perish, so he gave new life to the planet, life resembling us. They created humanity in their image. The early test humans could barely stand, but soon they walked. She's going through evolution, but it's not evolution and it's not religion, it's aliens. I mean, this is kind of what Ridley Scott did, I think, in what, Covenant? Or I didn't, I wasn't a big fan of when he revisited the alien universe, but it's like how they created humans and they began to reproduce. A civilization was born in harmony with nature. Atlantis. Hey, all this conspiracy. Like now we're talking about fucking Atlantis. Okay, but it's tied to nature, right? It all goes back to the bees. It all goes back to nature. It all goes back to harmony. But some humans wish to surpass us. Status, socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter if it's the rich versus the poor or alien versus human. That's where the satire comes in. And in a bit, I'll talk about the definition of commentary versus satire. Because you could say something's a satire, but unless you actually know what that means, then how do you look at it, right? If you're watching Bugonia or you're reading Bugonia, and satire is not your thing, and you're just taking this as a straight story, you're going to think it's silly, right? But there's so much more underneath it that's what the satire is, that's what the commentary is, that you have to have an understanding of what that stuff actually means in order to appreciate what Will Tracy's doing here. So what Will Tracy's doing is he set up Michelle as the CEO and Teddy as the blue collar worker in the factory, right? Like scanning boxes. But now he's taken that to a universal level where she's an alien and he's a human, and but their status and relationship to each other hasn't changed. Yeah, I think that's great. The new humans were more aggressive. A conflict began that finally ended in a thermonuclear war. This is in our history. In the war's wake, all of humanity was extinguished, save for a select few who built an ark that traveled the oceans for a century. This is mushing together Atlantis and the Bible and nuclear war and conspiracy. It's everything, which is why the reader thinks this is so crazy, right? It's a crazy person, mix of religion and science. How can you prove a negative, right? P.T. Barnum did this with the circus. He'd say, here's a 160-year-old woman. Who's going to tell me that she's not a 160-year-old? So I like to do this with my kids. Would you like to hear my impression of George Washington? Hi, I'm George Washington. For all I know, that's dead on because no one knows what George Washington sounded like. You can't prove a negative. And so that's what Michelle's doing here, is she's just throwing all of this shit at the wall. And so the reader's like, oh, she's just feeding crazy back into crazy as a way to try to get him to get her out of the basement, right? Finally, when it was safe to resurface on dry land, the leaders of the Ark died. No, I guess died. And only a few mutant specimens of degraded semi-humans survived, the apes. We evolved from the apes, but the apes evolved from better humans. So we're kind of like the copy of the copy of the copy, where Michelle is like, the OG, like the original. That is some socioeconomic divide if I've ever seen it. That's what satire is. Again, we'll get to that. Evolution resumed, but towards chaos. The newly evolved human beings, your current ancestors, fought amongst themselves in an endless cycle of war, genocide, ecological destruction. Does that sound familiar? Does that kind of feel like where we are right now as a society? Maybe that's why Will Tracy thought that this would be a good film to like modernize and put out there in the current climate. They brutalized Earth, ruined her waters, ravaged her climate, poisoned themselves with drugs and technology, and even when presented with irrefutable evidence of their own self-destruction, the humans continued unabated. All of that is true whether you're an alien or not. And the fact that Michelle, the alien, was the CEO of a pharma company feeding into this destruction, she's so unaware of that connection that she's still answering the initial thematic question with, yes, I can remove myself from the pain I've inflicted on others because it's the humans who are self-destructive. And this comes back into play when she's in the throne room later, so let's stick a pin in that and come back. Then she shifts gears. Even I myself became more human, more selfish and cruel, because that's what being human is, right? More selfish and cruel. The longer I stayed here among your kind, but humans can't help the way they are. Of course, Teddy was going to be self-destructive. Of course, he was going to kill his mother. Of course, he was going to come back and continue to believe Michelle. Why? Because humans can't help the way they are. It's in your genes, the genes your ancestors implanted to strengthen themselves. It gets reproduced in your bodies and grows stronger. We Andromedans are here to eliminate that suicidal gene. to save humanity, yes, but also to save Earth from you and your kind. Michelle wasn't there to destroy humanity. Michelle was there to try to evolve humanity into something akin to what it used to be, something closer to what the Andromedans were, something closer to peace and rationality and coexistence and harmony. Teddy can't escape his own worldview. No, you came here to kill us. Wrong, Teddy. Yes, some of us would have preferred to simply terminate your species, but the Emperor believed there was still hope. Hence, the experiments. The experiment your mother was a part of, she was chosen because she was weak, because she was broken. If we could correct her, then perhaps all humans could be corrected as well. Wow. Oh shit. She just told Teddy that his mom was fucking weak. That the reason she was chosen was because she was broken. He just killed his mother trying to save her because she told him to put antifreeze into the IV, and now she's victim blaming and saying she's the we chose her because of how broken she was. Well, if she was broken, then how broken do you think Teddy is? These compounding insults are not having the effect of angering Teddy. It's just breaking him down. This is Michelle at her most fierce, whether it's in a boardroom or a spaceship. Again, Teddy, but you killed her, you killed her! Michelle, you killed her. I figured you'd be apprehended feeding antifreeze to a coma patient, and then I'd be freed so I could return to my work, but you actually got away with it, you sick ape. Remember when he called her a virus, and now she's calling him an ape? These, like again, they're the same person, and they're equally self-destructive because neither of them can accept the fact that they're responsible for other people's pain. And this is going to be the through line for the entire film, and that's the commentary that the satire sets up. And then Michelle sets the trap and says, you may hate me, you may want me dead, I don't blame you, but I have the information you need to save Earth. And you know I do. This is on page 89, and by here, Teddy has gone down the rabbit hole so far, he's committed himself so much that he has to believe what she's saying. So even when he says fucking demon, in the parenthetical, Will Tracy says wearily, because Teddy knows he's defeated. She's got him. Michelle, this is our destiny, Teddy Gatz, yours and mine, and the hour is almost upon us. The reason I think that line is funny is because you remember back throughout the entire script, this kind of like regal, kind of off Star Trek type of speak that Teddy was giving to Michelle. She throws it back at him to clinch the deal. The hour is almost upon us. Nobody talks like that. But Teddy thinks people talk like that, so she talks like that. In the prose, Will Tracy says, Teddy can no longer resist. He sees she is offering the only chance of completing his mission. He lowers the shotgun. I love that Will Tracy uses the word mission because it just highlights what I think modern script architecture is, which is evolving missions and using those missions to apply pressure to whatever the thematic question is that you're asking of the audience. So now that's it. Michelle has won. The battle is over. That was the climax. Everything else is the fallout. And on page 89, we have our lower third, the night of the lunar eclipse. We're back at Oxalis, and everything is kind of the mirror opposite of what it was in the beginning. This is great storytelling because everything is coming back to where it was. Michelle seeing the security guard, Michelle seeing the assistants, right? When she left the building, how dismissive she was, how cold she was. And now she comes back and Michelle says, hi, Ricky, yes, I'm back. How are you? Could you buzz me through? She's like overly friendly. Everything's fine, Ricky. It's all sorted out. I'm back. Could you buzz me through, please? Thank you, Ricky. She goes from the security guard to the valet. Hi, Tony. How are you? Have a good night. The valet just stares at her stunned, right? Everything is in reverse. We're going back. Oxalis is the belly of the beast. It's not only where Michelle came from, but it's the source of what Teddy thinks is his mother's pain, and it's also where Teddy works. It's his overlords. It's his boss. And so this is a nice touch as she's going through the offices, and she's going to her office, and she says, "Well, it's 5:35. Don't forget, if some of you need to go home, that's it's fine." So she's so she's still kind of saying, "No, you don't go home. We have work to do." But it's fine. So she's still playing the same games that she was playing before, even though this whole situation is so fucking absurd. And then we come full circle back to Corey, back to her assistant. That's where we started. And when we come back, I have important work to do. No disturbances. Okay, thanks, Corey. And they go into the office. And so we have a repeated beat here, but it's intentional. Michelle grabs the calculator to punch in the number for the closet to activate to beam them up. And she says, Teddy's like, on a calculator? And Michelle says, I punch a code in here and it initiates a link with the ship. And Teddy, on a calculator? Michelle, I know, it had to look banal, human, something totally inconspicuous. Does that sound familiar too? Does that sound like the antifreeze? He fell for it once and killed his mom. Is he going to fall for it again? Yes, because his arc is flat and he has to fall for it. So he does. It's a 58-digit code. I have it memorized. I haven't had to type it out in a while. The reader is thinking she's stalling. The reader is thinking, what an idiot. Teddy's a fucking idiot. I can't believe he's falling for this again. We're playing against audience expectation, even though I think most people go into this film assuming that Michelle's an alien. Otherwise, why do you have this movie? Why does it exist? If she wasn't an alien, then it's just some crazy guy kidnapping a woman, and where's the fun in that? So Teddy lets her concentrate, and she's just punching in numbers, 99570, blah, 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 and Teddy's fidgeting and everything. And then she's finished, and she says, okay, yeah, we should be almost ready here. I just have to press enter mainly. Are you ready? Teddy, yes, I'm ready. Fuck, wait. My air tank. I'll need oxygen. There'll be oxygen, Teddy. There'll be oxygen. Okay, what about Don? We'll pick him up. Don't worry. He's coming with us. He may, we may even be able to revive him. Right, so it's happening. Shit. Now, no, I'm ready. I'm ready. I prepared for all eventualities. This introduces a complication for Michelle. The reader obviously assumes that this is just Michelle shining him on, like, yeah, we'll get down, don't worry, there's oxygen. But then Teddy introduces a complication, suicide vest. Teddy, I can't take the chance that you'll kill me straight away. I can't. Michelle, that was smart of you, Teddy. The Emperor will admire your intelligence, your credit to your species, truly. A backhanded compliment, a credit to your fucked up evolutionary discharge, used to be an ape that was a lesser human from the fucking remains of the Ark, and right, like, a credit to what species? This fucking species? Teddy, I'm just trying to help. I know, Teddy, I know. So now she sets the stage. That closet there is a teleporter. What's going to happen is you're going to enter that closet and close the door. I'll count to 3 and press enter. We'll have to go one at a time so that our bodies don't reconstitute together during teleportation. Do you understand? I love that last line because it takes us right back to that supervisor training 101. I hear you, do you understand? Dominance that she's been saying this entire movie. Do you understand? I think that's kind of the point, that humanity just doesn't understand. Maybe that's why she keeps asking that question. I just thought of that now, but maybe that's why Will Tracy put that in there. Do you understand? Not Teddy, but do you understand humanity? And humanity's answer through Teddy is, no, I don't understand. I'll never understand. But Teddy, I think so. And then Michelle, here, I'll go first. Is that manipulation or is that real? Because I think she knows that that's going to get Teddy to get in there first. I don't want you to escape and leave me here. I'll go first. Michelle, okay, fine. Is that all a ploy to get him in the closet so that he can be locked in there and she can run away? What's going to happen? I don't know. Michelle, you ready? Teddy, I'm ready. I'll see you up there. Right? It's kind of like a little glimmer of hope for Teddy because she's validated everything that he's believed this whole time. So he thinks he's going to go meet the Emperor because he thinks that he won, that he proved himself to her by outing her. Teddy steps into the closet and closes the door. As soon as the closet door closes, Michelle begins to quietly inch towards her office door. She dials in the last digit on the calculator. That's a hint first of all, to the audience, maybe on a second viewing, or the reader on a second read. She dials in the last digit on the calculator. If he's in the closet, and this was all make-believe, why would she put one more digit into the calculator? Right there, the reader should know she's an alien. 3, 2, 1. Michelle steps backwards towards the door, screams, "He's got a bomb!" A small but very loud and powerful explosion. The closet is armored. Why is the closet armored? The closet is armored, but the door bursts open and we get a glimpse of Teddy being cut in half from the explosion. The metal handle of the door flies away during the explosion, hits Michelle on the head. She drops unconscious to the ground. The cheap wig falls off, revealing her bald head. The calculator falls and slides across the floor. Will Tracy in his prose is putting calculator in all caps, drawing your attention to it, because it's necessary for later. We don't want the reader to forget where that calculator is. In the film, this is changed from the metal handle to Teddy's head coming out and hitting Michelle in the head and knocking her unconscious. Is that an improvement? I don't know. Does it push the satire? Absolutely. Does it take a little bit of the gravitas, a little bit of the tension out of what just happened? Maybe. Why did the vest explode? And we get an answer, kind of, in the script, but it's an interesting answer because it's in the ambulance and the detective says, must have reacted to his body heat or friction. Happens a lot with homemade explosives. Look, I know this sounds cold, but that's how the world is sometimes, and guys like him are, well, they're ultimately just too crazy to be alive. This is another person explaining things in a different vernacular with different words and terms, but everybody's got the answer, right? Everybody's shifting blame. Nobody's taking responsibility for anything. Guys like him are too crazy to be alive. So this is just another entity engaging in that same refusal to take responsibility for the pain that is inflicted on others. Page 97 is where this happens, and then this is a little bit confusing here, how the ambulance crashes. A sharp, rattled exhale of air from the detective's mouth. The muscles in his face relax and drop as he falls to the floor. Michelle stares in shock. The EMT turns and looks at her, puzzled. Suddenly, another sickening exhale from the EMT, like a pig lung being squeezed out on a butcher's block. He falls dead. A loud sound of metal and glass. The ambulance has crashed. Michelle is violently shaken, still tied to the stretcher. From the driver's seat, we hear the unmistakable sustained honk of a body landing on a horn. Michelle frantically pulls herself from the stretcher and bursts out of the ambulance. Did somebody turn off a switch on the spaceship and kill these people? Or was it just a car crash? This confused me. Nobody's perfect. Anyway, Michelle goes back to Oxalis. And on page 98, this is the end of the Fallout sequence, and we are introduced to the beginning of establishing our new world. And this is why I say that Michelle is a co-lead. We don't need the story to end with Teddy, right? This isn't Nakatomi Plaza. This isn't, John McClane defeated all the bad guys, and now he goes home with Holly, and we roll the credits. We don't care what happens when he goes home. We just care that he left Nakatomi. Teddy dies, but the story keeps going because Michelle is a co-lead. She's equally important. So this is the fallout still of that final battle in the basement that she won. She gets to her office. She gets the calculator. She gets into the closet. She presses a button on the calculator, twists and folds inward into the closet wall, and boom. Imperial Throne Room day. Some time has passed, perhaps a day. Michelle has gathered with the Andromedan royal court and various aides in the throne room. We might glimpse the vastness of space somewhere behind them. A royal aide speaks to Michelle in a strange, subtitled dialect, like no human voice you've ever heard. In the film, we see her emerge as the Empress in the spaceship. I love these visuals. I think it's so fantastical, and I just love the rebirth kind of aspect of the visuals. But on the page, we just go straight to the throne room. They talk in this we and us kind of, we are, kind of dialect, like there's harmony and there's no I, there's no me, there's no you, there's just we, there's just us. You know, in the way that Venom talks with Eddie, we are Venom, which is an interesting kind of way to make Michelle talk, because in the real world, right, in the human world, it was all I, me. But this is a collective. It's the complete opposite of Michelle, who is alone, sitting on top as the ruler of Oxalis. So Michelle corroborates everything that she said to Teddy in the basement. Inform us of the experiments on the human subjects. Her aides look at her with downcast faces. The experiments have nearly all failed. There are only 2 human subjects remaining. It would take some time to finish this work, and there is no likelihood of success because of who they are. The throne room is a boardroom. They're all acting like they're just in a company meeting. They're even referred to as aides. There's nothing different between the aliens and the CEOs. An aide says to Michelle, a decision needs to be made. This is after they all acknowledge that they all feel remorse. Well, that's very nice of you to say. Michelle gazes out the window at the cosmos. Somewhere out there is Earth, and it's 7.5 billion humans, and she takes a breath. We believe it is over. Her aides acknowledge the truth wordlessly. Michelle, we believe they have had time, and in their time they have imperiled the life they share, and so we have decided their time will end. Blame shifting. She is removing herself from the pain she is about to inflict on humanity, because even aliens have the same answer to the thematic question. And when you look a little bit deeper into this, Michelle did not have to do what she's about to do. They said there were 2 human subjects remaining. It would take time to finish the work, and there's no likelihood of success, right? Isn't that true with all business decisions because of who they are, blame shifting? But there was still a chance. But Michelle decides to step away from that chance. No. A decision has to be made. We have decided their time will end. A difficult decision, Will Tracy says in the prose. One by one, the aides leave. Michelle, the fuller humanoid, the great and wise Andromedan emperor, is alone. She must pay for the mistakes of ancestors. What does that mean? She must pay for the mistakes of ancestors. Whose ancestors? Her ancestors? Humans' ancestors? A cube appears before her. The emperor stares at the cube. The emperor slowly lifts her hand and opens the box to reveal a square. The emperor reaches out her finger hesitantly and touches the square. In the film, she pops a bubble, ending humanity, right? Kind of like it's the payoff to the title cards with the earth kind of melting, and then she pops the bubble, and then we go into our final montage. I love popping the bubble. This is where the collaboration of film really, really hits me as like an art, because you could have just filmed this as is from the page. It still would have been great. What Yorgos Lanthimos does with this material elevates even what's on the page in unexpected ways, through the performances, through the blocking, through the choices that they made as a team, the production team, all that. Popping the bubble is so great because it's just so quick and kind of childish and playful in a way. You pop a bubble, you blow bubbles and your kids pop them. She's popping a bubble like it means nothing. This is page 100, top of page 100 out of 102 pages. We have 2 full pages of this final montage of humanity just dead everywhere. All different people in different positions. British school classroom, Korean school classroom, airport, Acropolis, cathedral, nightclub, a meat market, a museum, a building, Amazon rainforest, landfill in India, Hotel Grande in Athens, an AA meeting room, a toy factory, a cemetery, a bedroom, a freeway, a hospital, a church, the Oxalis Fulfillment Center, Teddy's house, and then a meadow. All man-made interference with nature has stopped. All human life is gone. There is only quiet, utter peace. But the countryside is alive with the sounds of insects, birds, and mammals, the natural world teeming with post-historic life. Earth has been saved. A beautiful flower gently sways in the clean breeze. A honeybee lands on the flower. Final image. Honeybee at the end, honeybee at the beginning, bookending the film. It's the same image. Look at the layout on page 102 on the final page of the script, and look at all this white space. Look at how Will Tracy is making you read this, almost like a poem, right? It's very lyrical. All man-made interference with nature has stopped. All human life is gone. There is only quiet, utter peace, but the countryside is alive. Earth has been saved. Did Teddy save the world by being the final straw to end humanity? It wasn't his initial plan. He wanted to save humanity, but he says he wanted to save the world. The aliens hadn't decided to end the human experiment until Teddy did what he did to Michelle, and she saw what humans were capable of. Essentially, societal reprobation, right? All humanity, it is who they are, they're lost. The end, experiment over. But the earth has been saved because the bees are still there. Teddy wanted to save the bees. Well, guess what? He saved the bees. Commentary and satire. Why is this script better than just a sci-fi thriller movie? What is it about satire that elevates it? And what does that even mean? Satire, commentary, theme. The thematic question: can we remove ourselves from the pain that we inflict on others? That's the question being asked. The commentary is that all humans at all levels of status are all capable of the same delusion. They're all capable of the same blame shifting, and they all use their own words and terminologies and rationalizations and spheres and all this other stuff to rationalize and make sense of their blame shifting, to all make sense and to distance themselves from the pain that they inflict on others. That's the commentary, that we all do it. It's not us versus them. We're all guilty of this. We're all self-destructive because it's what? It's in our nature. Satire is when you take that commentary and you represent it in a way where you take a part of it and you create the absurdity to where you make it so absurd as to be comical. But it's that satire, it's that absurdity that exposes the truth and the reality of the commentary. So by having Michelle be an alien and by having the aliens speak in CEO speak and be in a boardroom to make this decision as if it was like a tiny little nothing decision, but it ended humanity, and she pops the bubble, or he or she opens the cube. That is so absurd that it forces you to think about the commentary underneath. Because if all he did was say, eat the rich, whatever, here's what I'm trying to say, CEO bad, Teddy bad, everybody bad, Casey bad. If that was where Will Tracy went with it, then it would just be too bleak, and who wants to watch that? Who's going to walk away from that with any sort of message other than, wow, like I guess we're all fucked. So by putting the satire in there, by putting the comedy in there, Will Tracy is making it more digestible, and he's allowing you to take it home with you to think about it later and to think about what the commentary is. So that's my take on Will Tracy's screenplay for Bugonia. I hope you found this whole series interesting and educational. If you have any comments, you disagree with me, you agree with me, you got something to say, put it in the comments below, and come back to the channel for more deep dives and screenplay architecture, all things related to screenplays and to screenwriting. So with that, thank you for joining me. Until next page, I'm Matt Weiner, and this is Fade In, a channel dedicated to the art of screenwriting.